was also so uh, how would you say? Well, there was so much to unravel with Jack too that Benny Wallace sent me in a letter, sent an email and said, "Would you please tell Jack not to be so inhibited? And say what he really thinks, because Jack doesn't mince any words and this and that." Yeah, I mean, I'd love to do. I could do it every day. There's several people. We could just make it a continuing series of what's going on in your life.
Since COVID happened, at the beginning of COVID, there's the 5 other guys, a few musicians, Alex Foster's one, and Bob Rose, and a couple other guys. We've all known each other since at the latest we met was in our 20s. One guy when I was in the 4th grade, one in high school, college, and we had a Zoom every Sunday during COVID, and it was fascinating. We just, we don't see each other that much, but we talked every Sunday all through COVID, and we still try to do it as much as we can. It's a trip, and things just come up, like, Israel or whatever's going on, or the climate, or a gig, or it's funny, and just people just start talking. It's great. It's great to communicate with people that you like.
That could be another idea for another podcast. Have like a little meet the press without the press.
Yeah.
4 or 5 friends every week. Have a few friends just discussing what's going on in their lives and in the news. And
Mike Clark and Lenny White have a thing called Stick People, and they do that with drummers. I've never been on it, but it's such a great idea. They get together with drummers and online Zoom, and I guess they just talk about drumming or whatever, wherever it goes. But that would be a fun thing you and I could do, because we're both good talkers, and we just get maybe 2 other guys or 2 other musicians, men or women, obviously.
Yeah. In fact, sometimes maybe even topics, like Benny Wallace and I were talking, and Benny came from Tennessee, as he says.
I know Benny. I used to play with him. Yeah.
Right, and he says hello, and he was watching our last episode, and Benny and I talk a lot. We're another person that we've been friends since. Benny's 5 years older than me, so I think I was 22 when I met Benny, and he was 27. So we've been friends since then. But he said we should do an episode, get cats that spent time in the South, Civil War, pre-civil rights, in the South. Like black and white. Get about 4 people. Get you and me and Benny, maybe Bill Easy, and some cats that grew up like that, and just discuss the racial situation.
Well, I talk a lot about it in my book, the way I was raised in Memphis and New Orleans, and the intense racism, not hate necessarily, but segregationism. And I mean, I guess it comes out as hate, but how segregated it was, how it's just these attitudes. And then my life was, my parents weren't that way, my immediate family, but everybody else was, very prejudiced. So my life was so different. I just glommed onto these musicians, and my best friends were these, black musicians. And I got into the black culture and the whole thing. And what a crazy thing, man, to come from that and to see people are people. But, that sounds trite, but it's really what's happening,
Well, that is. And that story you told about your grandmother was great too.
Right, exactly. That would be a great subject, at least for a talk. It would be great. That's a great idea, Bob. You should do it.
Yeah, well, we'll think about it. Let's talk about it later.
Yeah, Jesse will do it. Jesse will hook us up.
Yeah. So where we kind of left off, there were a few places that I wanted to explore that we didn't quite get to in our last conversation last week. One of the things that I wanted to talk about a little bit was you and I both share a love of comedy.
Oh, yes.
And you actually had a hand in being a stand-up.
Yeah.
I remember asking in like the late 70s or early 80s, I think early 80s, like somebody, what's Mike Wolff up to? And they said, he's doing stand-up comedy now, and hearing that about you, and then you detail it in your book.
Oh, yeah.
And by the way, folks, just while we can do this is the book. It doesn't come with this piece of paper stuck in it. Is that better here? And
hands on the title, but yeah, that's good. Yes. On that note, yeah.
On that note, and it's also going to be available as a talking book.
Yeah, right now it's out as paperback, hardback, and Kindle. And I finished the audio portion. I actually scored it, did a lot of music with it. And I'm just waiting to find out when they're going to put it out. I assume it'll be put out in a month or two. I don't know what they're waiting on. It got approved. There's just a lot of technical issues when you do an audiobook, but I think it's okay. So I'm hoping that it's at least out for Christmas.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
And it's a great book. You're a very good writer. And I think the way you put it to me, you did a half an hour a day.
Yeah. I did a half an hour a day at my computer. The best course I ever took in high school was 9th grade. For a year, I took typing. So I'm a pretty good typist, pretty fast. I was 90 words a minute. Now I'm way down, but so yeah, I would just sit at the computer and I wanted to write it myself. So I would write and what would happen was it would just come to me, So it was a great experience. And I'm mulling over writing another book. I haven't figured out the exact subject, but I'm mulling.
This book was relatively easy to write because the subject was you.
Well, if it was so easy, why did it take 9 years? Yeah, but no. Yeah, I think anything I would write about would be thoughts and experiences I've had, though I have some ideas for some fiction, but that's such a commitment and I'm really busy doing music. So I don't know if I'm going to do it.
Yeah, I know. I think of things. I'm still working on my memoir too. But
important, and I'm really proud of it. I'm glad I did it, and I was getting, I got nominated for Best Biography for the Jazz Journalists Association for this year, and so I'm really. I didn't win, but I got nominated. So I'm really glad, that it's out there and people are liking it. It's great.
Well, it's a wonderful story, and we're going to get to we didn't get to the most dramatic part yet. We're saving that for today. Because there's a real drama in there.
Oh yeah.
It's a frightening. It's a story of true life, and I'm saving it for a few minutes from now. We'll get to it. But I was thinking that like one of the things that we had, because you and I are exactly the same age, within a few months of each other. We were both born in 1952.
Right.
And one of the things that we had at that age was Johnny Carson.
Right.
On the, like the idea of the first talk shows, we missed the very first talk shows, just for the kiddies that are listening to this, were
well, I remember seeing Jack Parr when I was little, but it wasn't really important to me. And it wasn't until Johnny that it really kicked in.
Right, me too. I mean, I remember seeing Steve Allen, but not as a talk show. Yeah. Just I remembered he had good musical people on it, and later I found out who those people were, but I just was watching it with my parents and I said, oh, that's Chet Baker. And then, various people that he had. But with Carson, the biggest feature for me were the guest comics that he would have. I mean, it's the first time we saw people like Woody Allen as a stand-up and Bill Cosby with his early routines and, plus all those people. I mean, people like Jack Carson and John Biner and, all of those cats that were influential. I think on the jazz, a lot of jazz musicians had that type of humor.
Yeah.
It was a certain type of sense of humor, a hip sense of humor. Lenny Bruce and Mort Saul and Pete Barbuti.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Did you ever get to know Pete Barbuti at all? Or
never met him, but I really dug him on the show. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, those kind of people. Because I had a similar experience when I used to study with Richie Kamuka. I would do my lessons at the Griffin Show, which I mentioned last time. And one of the side benefits of having the lesson with Richie and getting to meet the guys in the band like Jim Hall and, Saul Schlinger and other people was staying for the show and hearing Moms Mobley live. Moms Mobley. Sorry, Moms Mobley.
Hank Mobley. Yeah.
Hank Mobley, Moms Mobley, yes. And people like that. And what I meant to say was then, you're doing a stand-up. You called them your kind of lost period because in 1982, you stopped conducting for Nancy Wilson and went on to do something else, which you were not completely sure what that was, but you knew there was another destiny for you. Is that an easy way to put it? Yeah. So then you started hanging out with Louis Black, who I know from The Daily Show, And I find he's hilarious. If you don't know him, people, he's that angry guy.
Yeah, exactly.
And very funny. And there was a place called the West Bank Cafe,
Mm-hmm.
and Lewis was an alumni of Yale, right? And there
Right.
was certain kind of cats. You could maybe say it better than I can. I think that hung out there and started a comedy
Oh
thing.
yeah, what it was he actually my wife was at Yale Drama School and he was there. It was Yale Drama School. I mean, I didn't know my wife at that time, but Polly Draper. But yeah, there was a bunch of guys that hung out at Yale, and Lewis was actually a playwright. He was in the playwrights group, and he was writing plays. And when he finished school, he came to New York, and he thought, well, what am I going to do? So they found this restaurant, the West Bank Cafe, and it has this downstairs room, and they convinced the owner, Steve Olson, who still owns it. It's on 42nd and 9th, and he's a great guy. We're all good friends now. And he let them run it as a kind of a theater bar, and they really were doing it to do one act plays. So they did tons of one act plays, tons of stars that weren't stars at the time came down there and did stuff, and some people that were famous too. And that's where I really got started doing stand up, because I was accompanying a singer. I didn't tell you this last time. I don't know, but I was accompanying this great singer.
Johnny was.
Huh?
What was his name? Johnny or something?
No, I got it. I'm spacing on his name, but he was a classical African-American guy who was a classical singer, and he was such a good singer, but it was really difficult music. He was doing, even though he could also, he mostly did at that time, the late 20th century classical music, really, dissonant intervals. He could sing it all. Thomas Young, that was his name. Fantastic guy. And so Thomas, a friend of mine, Ray Leslie, he was a piano player, wasn't really a jazz guy, so he suggested me to Thomas, and we started rehearsing, and just very sophisticated Sondheim and difficult tunes and Lush Life and the key of A and just different stuff, So we rehearsed, and he goes, "Okay, yeah, that'll work out." He said, "But I have to. It's an hour and a half show. I would love to take a break after 45 minutes and just get off stage and chill out. And would you do a piano piece?" And I guess sure. And then it was as it was getting closer, I thought, man, it's just piano and voice. They've been hearing me play away for 45 minutes. Maybe I could do this little fun thing I used to do at parties, where I'd get at the piano and I'd play this commercial. There was a commercial at McDonald's called "You Deserve a Break Today. Come up and get away" at McDonald's. And I'd start off and say, if the great composers, classical composers, were alive today, first of all, they'd be really old. But second of all, to make money, they'd be writing jingles. So I would do that jingle as Bach, Mozart, Stravinsky, Ravel, Satie, and then I'd end with a really big, flourishing Beethoven. Da 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 ba 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 ba, and then take it to the minor key. It was really fun, and people just anyway. This audience was a hip New York downstairs. It was audience, and they loved it. So at the end of that show, Lou came up to me and he said, "You are really funny, man. We have a free show every Saturday at midnight. We call it the free show. And people just come that we like, and they do their bits, their comedy. They might do some kind of other crazy song or, a poem or whatever. We'd love to have you come there anytime you want." I went, "Really?" He goes, "Yeah, you just come down and we'll put you on." So I thought, okay, but I got to get more material than this. This is all I know. But I did go down on the midnight, in the next week, because this was a time when I'd gotten off the road. I really didn't know what I was going to do. I just knew I didn't want to end up conducting, from Anne Margaret at Vegas or something. I knew that I was more of an artist than that, but I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do. So this comedy thing kind of happened like that. So I started doing comedy there, and I'd go back every week, and I'd go, I got to spend the week. I got to write some stuff. In the meantime, to make money, I was teaching piano lessons. I was coaching singers, vocal coaching, that wanted to be on Broadway, and that was rough.
Yeah. When I went to Toronto, just not to interrupt, but after 9/11, I didn't want to come back to New York so quickly, because I was still a little scared. So I stayed in Toronto. I was in Portland, Oregon. I was there for 6 months, and then I spent about a year and a half in Toronto. And of course, while I was in Toronto, with all the mover luck, my brother and I call it, which is a combination of bad circumstances and bad judgment. Um, we I ended up, the only employment I had was coaching these singers, and it could be rough at times. Though I made some very nice friends and all that, and they were lovely people and everything. But then they had the SARS epidemic, and they had all of this stuff. So I ended up coming back to New York because I felt if I was going to die broke, I might as well do it in New York. But
well, I put an ad in The Voice, and I put an ad for as a piano teacher, and then I put an ad in a jazz piano teacher, and then an ad as a vocal coach, because I had learned that studying singing, and I wasn't never done a musical or anything, but I just kind of learned a lot about that stuff, which really helped me because I accompanied singers. So I got interesting students. I got people that wanted to mostly be on Broadway. I got some R&B people. I had a really tough, interesting woman, who wanted to sing pop. I want to do, she was very operatic. I want to do the young thing, the hip thing. I go, well, okay, what do you want to do? She wanted to do the Sting song. Every breath you take, every move you make, every breath you take, every move you make, I'll be watching you. I go, no, it's I'll be watching you. I'll be watching you. Okay. So they say, I want to do the anger thing, the young thing, I feel the earth move under my feet. I feel the sky tumbling down. And I would just sit there at the piano, just going, oh, what time is it now? I look at my watch. Okay, it's going to be over soon. I'm going to make $40 or whatever I was making. So it was pretty painful to teach. I didn't really enjoy it too much.
Yeah,
but I also got a gig at a restaurant. A friend of mine was kind of part managing a restaurant on 42nd Street, not the West Bank. And I got a gig booking the entertainment. They had a piano upstairs. So I booked myself every Thursday night. It was mostly cabaret kind of stuff. But I could go down there and get a free lunch, which was really cool, So it's funny. I had been working as a professional musician really after high school, and then I went to college, and then went on the road. I got this gig with Cal Jader, went on the road at 19, and actually when I was 20. So I'd been working for 11 or 12 years, and I hadn't really gotten to check out a lot of things. You know what I mean? I was very focused, and I was very,
insular world, jazz.
I ate, drank, slept, breathed music. But when I got with Nancy Wilson, it opened me up a little more to show business, because we worked with a lot of interesting people, and I was conducting and singing with her and arranging. But I just didn't want to do that anymore. I'd been traveling. I was tired of it. So I got off the road, and this is all the things I was doing. So I was also playing club date gigs, which are weddings or bar mitzvahs, and the people were terrible. But, anything to make money, man. So
when you talk about, but just funny when you mentioned your McDonald's,
yeah,
it reminded me of a friend of mine who was a very hip guy who did stand-up comedy. He ended up doing a jazz radio show in Connecticut for a while. And but he did this bit that was like a parody of, do you remember when you'd hear da da dee da dee da 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 da, and this British guy would come on and say, how many of you recognize this theme as Stranger in Paradise?
Right.
How many of you actually know that it's, I think, the second or third Pulavitsian dance by Borodin? And then here, these records will be available to you. And they start to sell you these records by mail order and everything. So my friend did a parody of that by saying, I'm sure many of you with the same voice realize, have heard this. You may recognize this as 4-in-1 by Thelonious Monk, but how many of you know that it's based on the chord changes of 5'2", Eyes of Blue, Coochie, 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 Coo. Has anybody seen my gal? And that was his bit, which he told me that he would get about 3 laughs.
Yeah, it was hip.
From the band. And then the audience would be sitting there staring at him like, what is this? But, so you.
Well, I think the general jazz cats do have a kind of absurd, cool, hip sense of humor. Like you said, that's what Lenny Bruce was doing, I guess, or whatever.
I think Lenny was sort of the father of that, and then Mort Saul was more the political side of it.
Yeah.
But Lenny was the guy on the edge, and I was very good friends with Lenny's daughter, Kitty. We're still in touch years ago and everything. And she
Cool.
brought me to a bunch of comedy clubs. I got to know comedians. And, some of those cats were pretty out too.
Well, that what really was cool for me with Nancy Wilson, what I got to, I mean, I always had heard my dad liked comedians, so I went and saw a bunch of them. He loved Alan King. I got to see Alan King, whoever. Sammy Davis Jr. was really funny when you see him do his thing. Guys were funny. But when I was with Nancy Wilson, we would always have a comedian, or often have a comedian opening, right? So we talked about that. David Letterman opened for us, different people. And that's how I became friends with Arsenio Hall. He was our opening act, So I was loving comedy then, and I was writing lines and asking Arsenio to say him. He'd say anything to try to, he didn't care. So when I got to this thing with Louis Black, when I could, Louis Black was not famous at that time. He was just basically a playwright, and he was starting to do comedy. That he had done it, I think, in Yale. They had a cabaret or something. So I just started doing it, and I had, because I was so loose and I didn't have a girlfriend at the time, and I was living by myself, but I had a very inexpensive apartment. I didn't really have expenses, in New York at that time. It was still super cheap.
Yeah.
So I just, I just was there, and I would still, if cats called me to play jazz gigs in town, I would do it for sure. But I just allowed myself to try stuff. So I took acting class. I did a play, I just did different things. But the comedy was what really excited me at that time. Now, I did use my piano a lot, sort of a jazz Victor Borga. That was how I was seeing it. But
you have a story. Go ahead.
no, I was going to say, I just had a lot of I saw Victor Borga play, and I really loved him perform. And I saw him at Carnegie Hall. But I'd grown up watching him, and Dudley Moore was fantastic too.
Well, you have one story though in the book that I think is sort of like sums up how you, in the end, didn't how you decided not to have.
Well, what happened? Yeah, I had auditioned to be at the Improv, which was a real cool jazz club right across the street from the West Bank, and that was really one of the hip clubs. There were a few. There was a Comic Strip, Catch a Rising Star, and the Improv, but I was regular at the Improv. You usually were more of a regular at one at the other, but you could go to the others. They didn't play it. They paid like $15 or $10. So anyway, I was there one night, and I was doing well. I was starting to do some college dates, and I did some college dates, and I go do these wild things, and great comics were on the bill, like Adam Sandler and John Leguizamo. And, we were friendly, but I was up there with if I didn't have a piano, I'd bring a little Poly 800 keyboard, play some stuff. But one night at the Improv, I went on. I had an early slot, which is 9:15. After the MC would do 15, I did that. And right after me, they announced, ladies and gentlemen, a special treat, Robin Williams. And Robin jumps out, everybody's screaming. And so he did an hour. He was going, that was a Tuesday night, and on Saturday, he was going to host Saturday Night Live. So he was just trying to find material. He'd go, what do you guys want to talk about? And then he'd just go off for an hour. It was like genius,
Wow.
Really seeing a genius. I mean, just funny and soulful and, totally free. And I talked to him at the bar afterwards. I had done an opera bit, a funny opera bit, like a jazz thing. And he was very complimentary because he loved the opera. And then right after him, they go, ladies and gentlemen, Robert Klein, one of the great early comics. So he comes on, he does an amazing hour. He's working on new material. So afterwards, I'm hanging at the bar with these guys, and nice cats. But I go home and I really think about what I saw. And I thought, I'm a good comedian. I'm funny, but I'm not going to be like that. These guys were like Miles and Train or something like that. You know what I mean? And I said, maybe I have a chance as a jazz musician to really say something. But as a comedian, I'm talking about kind of jazzy, hip stuff. So for the general audience, I'm having to spend a lot of time telling them what I'm talking about. A lot of comedy is blowing up a balloon and busting it, right? So if you go out there and say, well, Michael Jackson wearing a white glove, or whatever you're saying, at that time, or whatever you would say now, like, Trump, you just say Trump and everybody knows what you're talking about. Well, if I used to do a thing where a bit where I would say, there was this guy named Wild Bill Holiday, and he started playing these tunes. I don't know why that I'm feeling so bad. And he was in a party, and they had these helium balloons. He goes, I long to try something I've never heard. There's a Billie Holiday. Okay, but I'm having to explain all this stuff. And, it was just, and I'm 2 a.m. sometimes I'm going on. That's the slots I'm getting to these drunk prom kids, and I realized, man, I've got my work cut out for me. So I realized I was in this bubble of jazz and hipness, and that I just
same thing happened to my friend who was doing that bit.
I just had a better chance of being a jazz musician, I thought, and that was more really something I could already kind of master. I mean, not that I ever master it, but that was something I already got so experienced. But I still did the comedy for like 5 years, even when I got Arsenio Hall. So it helped me get the Arsenio Hall show.
There's a funny thing too about what's esoteric and what's popular. Like I was thinking about fame and the fleetingness of it, and like what's a famous name now and how it might be in 50 years.
Yeah.
Like, if you talk about Taylor Swift, I mean, she's everywhere, ubiquitous. I mean, forget it. And I just wonder if, in the next early part of the next century, she's going to be like Lola Montez or something, like a name from a.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. Everything is so temporary these days. I mean, I have to say, my sons are good friends with her, because they're musicians and actors. And my older son knows her well. And he just says, he likes her and says, she's the smartest woman I've ever met of anybody.
I would believe it.
So, and he likes her a lot. She's a good person. And she just gave every one of her crew $100,000 bonus. She's special. Now, I don't know whether her fame will last, but it doesn't need to last. She's doing it now. She's in her early 30s.
Right, well, I just used her as an arbitrary example, but I'll tell you.
But I know what you're saying.
But you know what's funny is one time when I'm sitting there, this is about 20 years ago, and we're taking out, a friend of mine takes out a jar of Paul Newman's salad dressing. And I said, oh, yes, that incredible master chef, Paul Newman. I said it sort of facetiously. And he looks at me, he was about a 20-year-old at the time. He says, do you mean he wasn't? I said, well, no. She said, well, what did he do? I said, well, he was it. And I start running down Paul Newman movies, The Hustler, HUD, Butch Cassidy, The Sundance Kid, The Sting. And he's like, no. Finally, The Hudsucker Proxy. He said, oh, is he in that? And that was like his obscure Coen Brothers movie.
That's the way it goes, right? Yeah. It's, we're not all going to be Miles Davis and Bach. You just got to do what you want to do. And, probably everybody will mostly just fade out. That's cool. I think it's cool, man. I'm cool with it. But yeah, who knows what's going to happen with all these people?
I think there's no alternative to it anyway. But, you are who you are.
But back to me. But yeah, I know.
I mean, but, I'm a huge Davy Shilkraut fan. For me, the world wouldn't be the same without Dave Shilkraut's alto playing. Maybe there's only 10 of us, but he's not here anymore, but we still remember him, So there's something to be said for that. Another thing you mentioned in the book that I wanted to get around to, just funny, you mentioned partly it had to do perhaps with your Tourette's, but I think the way you put it is really funny and brilliant, that you like to chew on words.
Yeah, well, taste them.
Taste them, yes. You kind of taste
them.
Yeah,
it's definitely a tick that I have where we have lots of ticks, but if there's a word I like there used to be an ad for this thing called Juicy Juice on TV. And my wife would tell me, I wouldn't even know I'm doing. She goes, man, that Juicy Juice ad came on, and for 2 hours, you're just going, juicy juice, juicy juice. I just had to taste it. And, the whole thing with a tick, like I tighten up here, or I make this noise, it's an impulse, and you feel this impulse coming in this, it's called a premonitory thing, premonition, and you have to do it. It's like you have to scratch, you have to itch, you have to have an orgasm, whatever it is you have to do. These ticks are the same thing. So they vary though. They wax and they wane. Sometimes I don't really have a lot. All the time I had cancer, I had no ticks. There was no room in my body for that. But all my life I've had it. And so, yeah, That's how it goes, you know.
I was thinking that I myself also, I don't think I have Tourette's, but I have had this habit. I said, that's funny. You do the same thing I do. I would find a word. Even I remember being a little kid and hearing my grandmother say Luxemkugel.
Ah.
And I would stay on Luxemkugel for a half an hour until they had to get me to stop.
Yeah, it feels so good to say it, right?
And I'd say it with an accent, Luxemkugel, and I would start exaggerating it and saying it. Other words, Jimmy Witherspoon.
Oh,
I love to say that.
that's a good one.
Isn't that a good one? Jimmy Witherspoon.
Witherspoon. Oh, yeah.
Cucamonga.
Oh. Well, I have another thing. I think we talked about it before. The thing that people mostly know Tourette's from is people that swear bad words, right?
Right.
Whatever the worst word is, they'll say it. They'll use the N word when they don't mean to be prejudiced, whatever. They just, these words, it's like pink elephants, they say, you can't. So I have a thing, I don't say them, but in my mind, remember I told you I'm a good typist? I type them. So I'll type Fuckyou, and then I'll change the keyboard and I'll go Fuckyou. So I'll put all those letters from the left side to the right side in my mind. And I do it a lot of times. I don't know how conscious I am of it. So if I hear a word, not only am I tasting it, but I'm typing it.
That's interesting. That's what I do with music on sometimes. Like I've written this kind of book of musical equations.
I know. You gave it to me. I was like, man, that would take me about 30 years to learn. Yeah.
Well, I've done since I was a little kid. I've been doing these musical equations in my mind. And it reminded me of, and Jesse and I've talked about that when I saw that movie, The Queen's Gambit.
Oh, yeah.
Creates the
chessboard. Singing on the ceiling.
On her ceiling. And I have a keyboard and a saxophone keyboard, like kind of in my mind. And what you're talking about is rearranging these letters. And the words like that is a similar mechanism. So I wonder if there's not a little bit of Tourette's in a lot of creative artists that we don't know. I know
Tourette's is it's a brain situation, and it's about, extra dopamine. So, when you have Tourette's, you don't do anything that a normal person can't do. You're not doing backflips or something. You're doing all the regular movements, right? So you just don't really, my observation is you don't have control of me. You have to make these movements. So it's possible how people have little bits of those different tics, or, there's a lot of people that have tics. If you go to a second grade class, 50% of the children have tics, but their brain grows out of it, And then a lot of people with real bad Tourette's, in their puberty, it gets better. Mine did not get better, but many people do. It's a brain thing for sure. It's chemical. But it is called psychoneurological, because there's, if you're excited or something, or scared or happy, it does affect it. It's not like it's just coming out on its own. Your thoughts are part of it. And for me, we were talking about music, I would get tics on sounds and fingerings, where I'd have to do it over and over, or, play a certain chord, or and I don't have to move my fingers. I just feel my fingers in my mind playing. I'm sure you do that too with your horn. I can feel myself playing, like just now, a C major 7. I play C, G, D in the bottom hand, then I'll play maybe E triad or F sharp. I can just see that and hear that because of doing it so much. I don't have perfect pitch, but if I'm going to play a tune I know, Stella, I'm going to hear it, I'm going to feel it, and I'm probably going to be on the right notes,
Right. I mean, and
it's tactile.
Some of that might come from being on the road too, because when you're in these planes and trains and automobiles, you can't just grab your horn, or you can't take a keyboard with you. Now you probably, there are portable things you can do, but I mean, we had to do that practicing in our heads to just envision the way the thing goes,
Well, I don't think for me it was that. Maybe it was when I was younger and I really had to practice, but I just know that 24/7 music is going in my head. Not necessarily music I'm working on or I want to work on, but I have a student now that wants to learn this George Shearing tune that he wrote, but there's no chart for it. And it's a little unusual because, it's just, so she's got some chart and it's not right. So I'm just having to work on it. Of course, now it's going on in my fucking head, and it's, I'm hearing it. Okay, now I got the bass line, I got the melody. I'm feeling these notes inside. I'm gonna have to write the whole thing out for her, And I'm not like a guy that can just hear it and know it exactly. I gotta sit at the piano, and so that's going on in my head, now, because I heard it a lot.
Yeah, and I think Oliver Sacks talks about, well, how does he call it? Something worms.
Earwigs.
Earwigs, earworms, actually.
Earworms, yeah.
Yeah, and that idea that, like when you can't, since we're talking about fixations, it could be you deserve a break today. Like I have to turn off the TV whenever that and have it your way at BK. I like want to throw a rock at the TV every time I hear it because that will stick in my head now when I'm trying to get to more important music.
I used to say that ring around the collar. Remember that ad, ring around the collar?
Sure.
I want to put my fist through that TV, man.
Yeah, that's what I mean. So
I was a good friend of Oliver Sacks, by the way, if you want to talk about that.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I was a chairman of the board of the Tourette Syndrome Association for quite a while. I was involved with that. My wife wrote and starred in a movie called The Tick Code with Gregory Hines. I think we talked about that.
Right. As a matter of
fact. My life. So the Tourette Syndrome Association found out about it. They came on the set, the president and somebody else, to make sure we were doing the right. Yeah, Tick Code. There you go. To make sure we were doing the right thing, and they're good for them. They were kind of monitoring, but they didn't know they had got me on top of it, producing, doing the score, and working with the actors. So they were cool, and they said to me, "Well, why didn't you do anything with us before?" I said, "Well, I was ashamed of it. I was on Arsenio and everything, but I tried super hard when the camera was on me not to have tics, and I could stop it for a little bit, and then it would go off me, and I'd let it fly, So anyway, I got involved with them, and Oliver Sacks was quite involved. He had written that book about that guy with Tourette's, Woody Ticky Ray, and the book is called "The Man Who Mistook His Wife for a Hat."
Oh, okay, that's what that.
There's a chapter. There are different chapters of his patients, and one it's not his real name, but he called him Woody Ticky Ray, and it was about a drummer, and this drummer had intense Tourette's, and he had a regular job, 5 days a week, and he played gigs on the weekends. So there was some medicine they had for him, and the guy would take it during the week, but he wouldn't take it in the weekend because he liked to be free to play the drums. He could just, it would just happen. So, but when I found out about it, I read this chapter and went, God, I have Tourette's syndrome. That's how I found out I had it.
That is. I didn't know
so I met Oliver because when we did the Tick Code, he came to a screening of it, and he was very positive, and that helped us a lot to have him, into it. And I met him, and then once I got involved with the Tourette Syndrome Association, we went to a lot of conferences, and he drove me, just the two of us. He drove us up to a conference once. We spent the whole weekend together. He was kind of a on the spectrum kind of guy, super smart, super sweet. Really loved him. He loved my children. He was just a great guy. But totally like what we're talking about, he could feel people. It was really special and super intellectual. So, he's
what a beautiful thing to know that guy like that. Yeah.
So anyway, when he wrote a book, and he did a lot of stuff on Tourette's, and so he had me over for dinner, and he had a piano. He was a pianist, classical pianist, and he wanted to interview me. And I don't think my Tourette's was as crazy enough for him as he wanted for his book. I mean, he had some real intense cases, but we spent a lot of time together. He'd ask me questions. How do you feel when this happens? He was kind of interviewing me and checking me out. And really, I have a lot of warm feelings for him. I miss him.
Yeah. Well, I want to get into your marriage, your relationship with Polly, and that thing, but maybe a little bit in reverse. Like first, how did the Tick Code? I mean, did she just wake up one morning and because she produced it, and was it?
She wrote it
and wrote it. That's what I mean. She wrote it and produced it. Did she just say, I've got an idea, or how did it start?
I don't really know. When she was a star of a show called 30 Something,
right?
And, well, first of all, when she was at that Yale drama school, the one we're talking about with Lewis Black, right? She went in as an actress. She'd gone to Yale undergraduate, but she was an English major and a drama major. And then she was acting even then. But then when she got into Yale Drama School, they had a playwriting course, and they would have the actors there to act out what the playwriting students wrote. So she would be in the class and she should have learned a lot about writing from that. And so she started writing. And then, but she was married before me to a really successful film and TV writer. And so she worked with him on some stuff. So she was checking it out. Then she got on 30 something, and they were really the Ed Swick and Marshall Herskovitz were they started it, the showrunners and the producers and directors and writers. They were very open to the actors telling their stories and having things to say. So she got involved with that and started writing little bits. And then after 30 something, she'd get a part and she didn't like it. And if they let her, she'd write it. And then she just got into writing, kind of fell into it. So at a certain point, I think we had our oldest son, I can't remember, but she just said, oh, at this point, I knew I had Tourette's, and she'd been around the scene, and she just got this idea to write the script. It wasn't her first script, but she got an idea to write the script about a 12-year-old jazz pianist with Tourette syndrome. So she wrote it, and it was really good.
Really good.
Yeah, I mean, it went through a lot of changes, with a first draft, and you have readings of it, and you keep working on it. And she shot a short of it. She took a directing class. She wanted to direct. She'd got a lot of experience on movie sets and TV sets, watching the directors and the camera people and everything. So she ended up not directing this. She wrote it and starred it, and this guy, Gary Winnick, directed it. And
I think it's important that people know that this was not a biography, so to speak, of you and your childhood. Your childhood was not at all. I mean,
she just took the idea of me having Tourette's, being a jazz pianist, and what I went through, because she could, she knew, and she took that and put it into a kid in New York who was with a single mom, which I wasn't, and it was really very creative.
It was very creative, and it was.
But she was really cool about having musicians in it, and I made sure that. And she wanted to have mostly real musicians in it, like Dick Burke and John B. Williams, and people like that. And Gregory wanted it to be real jazz musicians, and they were funny, man. So Dick Burke was a really close friend of mine, and he was funny. So I told her stories that Dick Burke had told me, and she put some of them in for him to talk about with the guys when they're hanging out in the diner, and I used to hang with those guys all the time. So a lot of it, her stuff usually comes when she writes. I mean, sometimes she'll write for a studio now, and then they have an idea. So she's got to write that idea. But usually she just brings something from her life. Like she created that TV show, The Naked Brothers Band, and we can get into that. But it all comes from her life, and then she makes it fiction,
Right. Now, when you met, you were doing, well, get a little bit ahead in our story. After those lost years in New York, you got a call from Arsenio.
Well, the lost years of New York were really important to me when I look back on it. The comedy, I did acting, and I became really good friends with Robert Duvall. And that was great for me because I'd hang with Bobby, and he lived right on 86th Street, but really close to me. I was on West End 92nd. He was on 86th, between Broadway and Riverside. So we spent a lot of time together because I knew his wife, a good friend of his wife's, and his wife was younger, more my age, and we became friends.
So you knew him before you knew Polly?
No, before I knew Polly, yeah.
That's what I mean.
I was these were those years we were talking about in the 80s.
Right.
It's in my 30s, so early 30s. So I would, he would say, why don't you come up with me? I'm going to be shooting. He shot this movie with Robert Redford, called The Natural. He was, based about it. Right. So he said, I'm going to be shooting it up in Niagara, by Niagara Falls and Canada and blah, blah, blah. Oh, I'm going to give you a plane ticket. I want you to come hang with me for a week. We have a camp. He said, call it Camp Duval. And we're going to, on the weekends when I'm not working, we're going to go to the beach. We're going to go do all this stuff, Barbara Hershey and all these people. I go, that sounds cool, man. So I went up there, and, we hung every day. He wanted me to come on the set. He brought me to the set, stand right behind the camera, So I learned a lot. I just learned about show business. He had a lot of parties with a lot of famous people. And so I got a taste of this whole world, I got a taste of it. And I was really excited by it. And I remember one party I was at, I was playing piano and Willie Nelson was singing with me and Pat Metheny was playing guitar, just things like that were happening all the time. So he had just got an Academy Award for Tender Mercies, so he was doing country western. So June Carter Cash was singing with me and, it was awesome. So then so that was one of those 5 years of scuffling, playing terrible gigs.
I remember you tell a story in the book that it was actually Duvall's New Year's Eve party.
Yeah.
And you had to go because you had contracted this ridiculous gig for a kind of, let's say, a connected family of some kind, perhaps. And it was actually just, one of those nightmare club dates.
It was a nightmare
party to go and do this.
It was a nightmare, man. I had to leave this most amazing Harry Dean Stanton. I'm talking with Harry Dean and, Glenn Close is there and all these people. And then I have to go do my fucking, 11 p.m. New Year's Eve gig in Queens. I have to take a key, just solo. And I'm getting $500. Those guys probably got $2,000. But I thought, wow, New Year's Eve, I need bread, So I'm going and I wear this suit and I'm sweating already. And I have to bring my Poly 800, which is not a very good keyboard, and a drumulator drum machine and a microphone and a little amp because I'm going to sing. And I don't know any pop tunes. So I bring like a fake book of Stevie Wonder tunes. And I go there and it's three couples, kind of connected looking couples in leisure suits, good guys. And they set up me in the living room on the floor and they set up 3 TV tables. They face me and they're eating and I'm sitting there going, everybody's got a play. Da, 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 da. Isn't she lovely? The drum machine's going sweating. I can't sing. Oh my God, man. So I take a break. I do it again. And finally I get out of there. They said, hey kid, you want some scungili? I go, yeah, sure, man. I just thought to myself, I had to take a cab. They had checker cabs. So I could get all my equipment in there. And I'm coming back at 2 a.m. It's freezing cold. It was New Year's Eve. I missed this party. And I said, if I ever make it, I'm never playing New Year's Eve again. And that was the last New Year's Eve gig I ever did.
That was fortunate. So now I'm just thinking that you get a call from you and Arsenio are still talking since the Nancy Wilson thing. You've remained friends.
Yeah, we remained friends. And whenever I was in LA, we'd hang out. He had a little group of guys that played basketball together, some famous actors and this and that. And I played ball with him. We'd hang out and talk on the phone. And, I saw he did Coming to America. I'd call him, hey, man, that was cool. Yeah, blah, blah. And then he subbed for Joan Rivers on the Late Show. He was great on that. We were talking about that. And I said, Arsenio, you killing it, man. Yeah, Mike, So he called me one day. He said, I'm going to do a talk. He had told me when I was with Nancy Wilson, he was our opening act. He said, one day I'm going to have a talk show and you're going to do the theme. And I went, okay, whatever. I believe he was a positive individual. When he got this, he called me. He said, hey, man, I'm going to do a talk show, but I want to do an all-woman band. I said, that's a great idea. I had no thoughts that I would do. I was in New York. He was in, Hollywood. So I said, he said, will you help me find some people? So I started putting out some feelers in LA. I didn't really know anybody, truthfully, any women jazz musicians out there. So I'm trying to find some other people. And after a week or two, he calls me back. He said, I've changed my mind. Okay, well, what do you want? He goes, I want you to be the band leader. I go, what? I go, man, I don't think I want to come to LA. He goes, well, why do you want to stay at LA, man? You want to be you want to be a male model or a theater actor? I go, no. He says, well, then come to LA, man. This is happening. So
you staying in New York, right?
Oh yeah, I was in New York. I flew out on my own dime. I had no bread then, but again, flights were cheap. You all right?
Yeah, I'm gonna maybe have to take a little bit of break in a minute. But I want you to tell this story, and then maybe you could tell your Count Basie story. And that will give me just enough time to do this little medical thing I've got to do. I'll go off screen, but I want to hear the rest of this.
All right, I'll just start talking about whatever comes to my mind.
Well, I'll finish the story. I can finish this one.
Oh, okay. So anyway, I'll tell it to Jesse. So I went to Cannonball. So Arsenio calls me, and I fly out there. and I get a rent-a-wreck, which is $5 a day. And I stay with the road manager for Nancy Wilson, Sparky, who I always stayed with. And I have an appointment to go to Paramount. So I drive to Paramount Studios, Melrose Avenue, 5555 Melrose Avenue, the big arches you see in all the movies, And I drive through, and I'm behind a big Mercedes and a Rolls Royce, and then me. I'm in this rent-a-wreck that's like, doing like that. And so they go in, the guy looks at me. What do you want? I got, Michael Wolff for Arsenio. And Arsenio was new. The show wasn't on. But anyway, he sends me, okay, you got to go up to the Bob Hope thing. You got to park here. So I park and I'm walking, trying to find it. There's a million streets with studios on it and offices. So I finally find it and I go in, and he gives me a hug and says, yeah, come on in, man. And so I had sent out a tape of some of my comedy, and I meet with him and his producer. And his producer is a little young woman who was younger than he and I were. I don't know how old she was, 35. Or she was just little, really sweet, from Chicago. So her name is Marla Kell Brown. I love her. And so we're talking, and we don't talk long. And then this guy, Milt Hoffman, who was kind of the business guy, comes in, and we talk for a while. And then that's it. So, okay, thanks. I stand up, and Arsenio gives me a hug. He goes, hey, man, I want you to get this job. That's it. I walk out. The next day, I'm in LA. They call me. You got the job. So I go back to New York. I get everything organized. I fly back out to LA. I don't have a place to live. My friend lets me sublet his apartment in West Hollywood. And I have to figure out how to be a band leader of a talk show, which is totally different than anything I'd ever done. But the good thing was that I had already done a lot of conducting for Nancy Wilson, so I kind of knew what was happening. Anyway, we spent weeks, just tried to audition musicians, and we ended up with a great band with Terry Lynn Carrington on drums and Star Parodi on keyboards, Peter Manu on guitar, and Tommy Williams on bass. It was great. And we did a couple of warm-up shows at the end of 1989. And we came back after Christmas and started this show. And in 5.5 years, I did it. It was a great experience. The interesting thing is I didn't have any money, so I had to borrow money from my mom to get a lawyer to negotiate my deal. But it was, it paid off. It paid off. It was great. So that was a great 5.5 years. And thanks for that. That was a good question, Bob. And so I'm going to...
you mentioned, you didn't have the money, you had to borrow it. I remember, 20, 30 years ago, it was just, even if you didn't have it, you could make it happen if you had the right connections.
Yeah. I luckily my mom, it was $10,000. My mom was a social worker. It was a big nut for her, but I promised I'd said I'm going to be making money. I was making like $5,000 a week or something like that. I never made any money. I said, I promise I'll pay you right back if it works out, and it did. And so I got that and got a really good deal. I mean, it wasn't getting rich like Paul Schaefer, but, it was a good gig, and it was through the Musicians Union. So I got a pension, which I'm getting now, which is cool. And social, security. I never really had those kind of gigs before. And I had an amazing experience. I got to play with the greatest of rock and roll stars. I became really good friends with Warren Zevon, who was a singer-songwriter. I loved Warren. I became very, very close. Whitney Houston, Mariah Carey's first TV gig. I played with her, played with so many people. And then all the jazz people. Oh, I got to play with B.B. King, who I loved. I got to play with Sammy Davis Jr. I got to play with, so many great artists, man. Yeah, jazz guys. I mean, Wayne Shorter, Chick Corea, Ayrto, Herbie Hancock, Branford Marcellus. I can't remember all the people.
You had the experience of, you got a great story of, you didn't actually play with Miles because he came with his band.
Right.
But you almost gave him your jacket.
Yeah, well, I love Miles so much. So he came on the show, and, he had lived near me, and I kind of followed him around one day, but I didn't have the guts to talk to him. I was kind of afraid of him. But he came on the show. He's very sweet. This was not too long before he died, a few years. And so we and I talked, and he said, yeah, come down tomorrow and check me out at the club. He was playing the Coach House way down in Southern California. So after the show was over, we usually shot about 5:15 to 6:15 or 6:30, something like that. I got in the car and I drove way down there. And I mean, I didn't tell them I was coming, but they recognized me because I was famous then. So they let me right in. And I go up, I hear the first set. After the first set, I go up and he invites me into the dressing room. And he and I are sitting there with some woman he's seen. And we're talking. We had a great talk. He goes, oh, I like Arsenio. I said, oh, look, man, next time you come back, do you think you could play in our band? Not just bring your band? He goes, oh, yeah, sounds good. You know, he probably didn't mean it. But I was wearing a really cool gray coat I had gotten. You know, I got a lot of clothes for the show. I had to wear a different outfit every day. I mean, I could repeat it, but not too often. So really cool. Not great, but it was a gray kind of tuxedo looking coat that had like black stripes, you know. And he kept going, I like that coat, man. He's touching that coat. And I was thinking, he wants that coat. I'm thinking, forget about it, Miles. You're way too, he's a tiny little dude. You're not going to fit in this coat. So that's the last time I saw him until he was in the hospital. I actually went and saw him, but I kind of wished I'd given it to him. But then I thought, oh, he would have never worn it. And now I still have it. And I call it the Miles coat. But he was my hero, Miles and Cannonball. So I was so happy. We became acquaintances, you know. It's great. So
as you were doing this show, I mean, you had a lot of illustrious guests, but there was one special guest.
Well, before I talk about the special guests, I just want to say, talk about comedians. I mean, Milton Berle, Jerry Lewis, all those guys. And I dealt with them all because, you know, Mishpuka, you know, they knew we could talk. And, you know, Milton Berle needed some help with a microphone. Or I don't know. I just got involved with those guys. I wanted to
meet. Getting his pants off from what I hear.
But, you know, who I became really good friends with, who I'm still friends with, is George Lopez. He was the go-to comic, was not famous at the time, but he became famous during that 5.5 years. And he and I were good friends, and his wife and my wife, and, you know, he had a daughter and my kids, you know, we became family friends, and we're still family friends. And there was a lot of guys, Emo Phillips, you know, so many comics, man, I can't even remember them all, but almost a couple a week, you know. So that was a great experience. And I loved all the actors, and I loved the actresses, and I got to meet all these great actresses. And when I told you I was at the Improv, well, when I performed at the Improv in the 80s, I always performed on Tuesday nights, 9:15 to 9:30. So I go to the bar, and because we weren't paid anything, we were allowed to get free beers, free drinks, you know. So I wasn't a big drinker, but I'll tell them, you have a beer. And I'd sit at the bar, and they had a TV, and they always turned it to ABC, and it was moonlighting till 10. And then at 10:30 something came on. And I always watched it there, and I thought, I really like this long-legged brunette with a hoarse voice, you know. And I thought, oh, Polly Draper, that's her name. One day I'll meet her. So one day I'm on the show, you know, a couple years in, and I see they have a board in the producers where they're booking everything. And they have these note cards with every name, the name of all the guests. It's like a puzzle, you know, Chinese puzzle. Monday, okay, this guest, music guest, blah, blah, blah. Tuesday. And sometimes they go, oh, this person canceled. We have to do that, you know.
Especially in a restaurant.
Yeah. So I see one day Polly Draper's coming in. I go, oh, man, I hope I can meet Polly Draper. But, you know, sometimes I can't meet them. This is somebody I really want to meet. If I can, I'll just go into their dressing room. I was, you know, a musical director. I could talk to anybody. I got to meet Robin Williams again that way. And James Garner, I was a huge fan of his. I knocked on doors, Sammy Davis, you know, all these people, Milton, Jerry Lewis. But with her, you know, she wasn't there early. I think she was working, so she came late, just in time for hair and makeup. But I happened to be in the hair and makeup thing, and she sat right next to me. So we really hit it off, and I was cracking her up, and I thought, this is my shot. But I didn't ask her out or anything. So I was too shy. I don't know. I just didn't feel it, you know. So she was really great on the show. She left. And a week or so after, I thought, I gotta get a hold of her. So I asked the producer, how can I get a hold of her? So why don't you call up? I don't know if there was email then. I don't know. Maybe there's email, but why don't you, contact her agent? So I call the agent. I leave a message. I don't hear anything. And I just, after a week or two, I go, forget it, man. So I look at the sheet that booked her, and I see her address where the limo picked her up. And it was 6 blocks from my address. So I went to this store called Arturo's, flowers. And I got 101 roses for $19.99. And I got a card and I said, I'm Michael Wolff, blah, blah, blah. Here's my phone number. And I put it on her doorstep and I left. And I didn't hear from her for like 3 or 4 days. I go, what? So I go after with work because, the show would end. It was, kind of fall. So it was still light, at 7 o'clock. And I drive by and I see my flowers wilted with the card. So you know what? I went and got another 101 roses, $19.99. I got rid of those. I put them down. I didn't hear a word. So then I waited a week. Same thing happened. So the third time I leave them and I get a call. And it's Polly Draper. And she goes, hey, I'm calling to thank you for the flowers. I got a message you would call from my agent, but I thought you were the guy I'd met at the dog park. I didn't know you were Michael Wolff from the show, blah, blah, blah. I said, yeah. I was trying to get a hold of you. And so I said, I got a gig. Would you like to come? I'm going to be playing it for a party for PETA in a private thing. It was great. It was with my band from the show.
PETA is the Save the Whales.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, not Save the Whales, but it was so you don't have fur coats, stuff like that.
Right, exactly.
So she came to that. It was cool. She was so famous then, and I was really great. I got Polly Draper coming with me. And then I asked her out on a real date. So that was maybe, that was during the week. And then I think the next weekend, we had a real date. So I go to pick her up at her house. Anyway, it was fantastic. We go out to date. We went, what did we do? We went out to dinner. We went to a jazz club. We went late night to Cantor's Deli, and then I just took her home and I just thought, this is going to be good. This is going to be a good relationship. In the meantime, she was separated from her husband, living with another dude. But that dude went away. I just kept after her, man. I just kept after her. I'd go and wait in her yard. She had a little swing. I'd wait in the swing, I stalked her basically,
That's what they would call it now.
Now I called it ardent pursuit. Now it would be called stalking for sure.
You didn't want to be the one to say that.
Be careful what you wish for. Now we've been married 31 years. We've been together 35 years, got 2 grown kids, But yeah, I was lucky.
Well, you were. I think she's, it's wonderful. And in fact that, especially in art or entertainment, to have a marriage that endures like that is it's a rare thing anywhere in the world, but it's, especially in our profession.
Oh, yeah. And we both traveled a lot for work. And we made an agreement at the very beginning of our relationship, even before we got married, that we would never ask the other person not to go do something. Like, if I'm going to Japan, I'm touring and she's going to do a movie in, Canada or whatever, or wherever, we'd say, we're not going to do it. We're just going to, you got to go work 6 months and, off and on, stay in Canada, go do it. I'd tell her, go do it. Great.
Well, this inadvertently sort of led you to come back to New York, didn't it, in a way?
Definitely in a way. We stayed in LA we got married, and then Arsenio ended, 30-something ended. We had our first child. We bought a house together and got married. And so
in California.
Yeah, in LA. It's perfect timing, really.
1988, 89, something like.
Well, this was in the 90s because my show ended in May of 94.
Well, that's right. He started in
94. 94.
Right, 94 he ended.
Her show had ended a few years before. So we had made enough money that we're okay. I mean, we were still working. I was actually concentrating on writing film scores. So I was doing more TV and film at that point. And she was just a busy actress. She was doing she wanted to do film. So that's mostly what she did. And then that's when she was writing, So I was really, I'd done the Sundance Composers Workshop where you go up to Sundance at Park City, and 3 or 4 times. That was great. I got to meet Robert Redford and Thomas Newman, and they have all these filmmakers up there. So one of the filmmakers was assigned to me, and I wrote the music for that film. It wasn't that good, but I was learning, and I was getting some gigs. I wrote TV films and did a hip hop movie called Who's the Man? It's actually a really good movie. So that was going kind of well. And I had a partner I wrote with, my friend Nick Tenbrook, that I'd gone to high school with, which was great. So, I was having a lot of fun. And I did the score to the Tick Code. And I was good. I was working really hard at that and really getting better. had a studio and I'm figuring out all the technical stuff. And, things were changing right then where it got really all about the computer and samples and stuff, and I would do that along with piano and hire real instruments if I needed. I had never gotten a big orchestra date or anything. I had learned to do orchestra with Nancy Wilson and conducted a lot of orchestras, but for the movie thing, my budgets were never that much. So then this was in the 90s. I decided, well, if I'm going to be known as a jazz artist again, I know from playing on TV, everybody's going to put me down. Like I used to go, oh, those guys that play TV, they can't really play. That joke about the trumpet player that comes back to New York and he's been playing TV for years and he runs into a friend. He goes, hey, what have you been doing? He says, oh, I've been writing movie scores. Did you see that movie, that I just wrote, that Scorsese movie? Goes, no, I didn't hear about that. And he runs into another friend. The guy says, what have you been doing? He goes, oh, I wrote this Porsche commercial. It went really, really great. Did you hear about it? The guy says, I haven't heard about it. And then he runs into another friend and says, what are you doing? He goes, well, I sat in at the Vanguard band. I hadn't been playing trumpet that much. It didn't go that well. The guy goes, yeah, I heard about that.
I heard about that. Yeah, I got lost. Right on the form. Yeah, I heard about that.
So what I did was I just...
Bruce line. A guy orders a $200 prostitute and the guy with the trumpet shows up in his door. But
well, so what happened was during this time, though, I thought I'm a jazz piano player, composer. That's what I got to do. So I decided, well, I kind of have anybody at my fingertips at this point. Ron Carter and Lenny White had played for the Tick Code score. I'd done all this stuff. So I just decided I'm going to get a guy that's older than me and a guy that's younger than me. I'm going to get my favorite drummer, Tony Williams, and I'm going to get Christian McBride, my new favorite bass player, and make a trio album. So I had a manager at the time, and he got me a really good deal with a Japanese company that would put it in the United States. We went to Fantasy Records and we recorded. And I was really nervous about it. Record over 2 or 3 days. And it was great. It turned out great. I was a Bosendorfer artist that gave me a great 9-foot Bosendorfer. And we made a record called Jumpstart. And it was, came out super successful. And I had a really good press agent who said, well, since people you think are going to put you down, let's put it out as just a white album. We're not going to put any to the press. Nobody's going to know who it is. Just say, listen to it. And they all were like, who is this guy? It's amazing. They wouldn't have said it if they knew it was me, the talk show guy. So anyway, that went great. I started touring, not with those guys, but, with a trio, actually with John B. Williams or Roy McCurdy. And then I made another album. And then right about that time, Holly got a gig to do a movie in New York. So she said, well, at that point we had both of our sons. They were 3 years old, and Nat was 3 and Alex was 9 months. She said, let's go back to New York while I do this movie, and it was the summertime. I go, that sounds great. Let's go. Well, I didn't have any projects. So Polly, I had an apartment she had kept here, and we squeezed in. It was hard, we're 3 of us, 4 of us, 2 kids and 2 of us. So, but anyway, so she was working in the day and I take care of the kids, and she'd come home at night and I'd go out and hang, and I started seeing all my old friends, going to Bradley's, going to all the clubs. And I just started meeting everybody again and sitting in the Zinc Bar and playing. And, I'm going, man, this is happening. This is where I belong, blah, 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 blah. So September comes along. She's still working. So we put Nat into a preschool here in New York called Beginnings on 16th Street. And he really likes the school. And we really like the school. We don't have to drive anybody anywhere. We don't have a car in New York. So we just decided to stay, and we kept staying and staying and staying. And I decided, well, look, New York's about jazz, but I'm just going to do jazz, So that really I just kind of go along with how it's going along, So I was really happy that happened. We still have a place in LA and we're back and forth, but I'm mostly in New York.
Yeah, that's I think that you put it very well in the book too, that just realizing that, you're never going to have this in LA. There's great musicians there and this and that, but the camaraderie between, the musicians and that kind of thing, just, like the contrast. I heard a comedian one time say the difference between New York and LA was that in New York, somebody walks up to you and says, have a nice day. They want you to have a nice day. They hope you do. Also in New York, if somebody walks up to you and says, I'm going to kill you, they're going to kill you right then and there. In LA, people walk up and smile and say, "Have a nice day," and then they kill you.
Oh.
And
Well, that's what people would say when you have meetings in LA and it gets all intimate. They show you pictures of their kids and then you never hear from them, Yeah. But, I happen to love LA. When you go out there from New York, you get a lot of props. And what that happened, with Polly, because she was a New York theater actress before she did 30 something. And, she'd done a few movies, but she's done 100 plays in New York. And so she got a lot of respect. And even my sons, who are actors and musicians, they started in New York. So when they go out to LA, it's just, but I love LA. I do love LA. And I play, with great people out there, and Erskine's out there, lots of guys.
Sure.
Joe Barbara, I played with him. There's great musicians and great young musicians, and so
certain level.
Mentzer's out there, man, and I love that guy. So there's enough guys out there to play with, but it's like the scene is small,
Right, and
of course the scene's getting small everywhere, but it's definitely better in New York. But
it's still small.
you know how it is. The scene is small now.
Yeah, it's a friend of mine that described New York, though that's rather depressing.
Oh.
He said it's like seeing your first love turn into a crack whore. I said, "Isn't that a little harsh?" He said, "Not really." But anyway, that was.
What he said is I'm being a little harsh towards the crack whore.
Harsh towards the crack whore. That's right. Don't insult crack whores like that. So now your children. Let's talk a little bit about that. You have these very gifted children who are no longer children, of course, but when they were children,
well,
they
they're still my children, but yeah, they're not children.
Right. Well, that's how I feel with my children too. They'll always be my children.
Yeah, I'll have Nat. Nat is my oldest son. He's going to be 29, and Alex is my other son. He's going to be 26. Alex Wolff, Nat Wolff, and they started on a show that Polly created called the Naked Brothers Band, which is on Nickelodeon, and it was a huge hit. And we started out as a little family film we did because Nat had wanted to be an actor, and it was I played the father in the show. I did the underscore, but it was all based on Nat and then Alex's songs. Nat was a great songwriter from the age of 6. And at 8 years old, he wrote a song that was in the top 200 of Billboard, the youngest songwriter ever. Just super talented guys,
That Rosalinda, that song?
Yeah. No, the one it was Crazy Car was the one that was a big hit. But Rosalinda, yeah. That was a great one, beautiful one. He wrote so many pretty, he's like 29 now. He's written probably 200 songs. And Alex, too. Alex has become a great songwriter. So their band is Nat and Amberson, Nat and Alex Wolff. They just put out a new album called Table for Two. It's fantastic. And because of their movie careers, they got so busy, they haven't really been able to do much with that in terms of touring. But they're playing at the Troubadour, I think, November 19th.
So they're both actors, and they're both, as well, both of them are acting? They both continued acting?
They're doing amazing. They're both doing amazing. Yeah, they're acting. And it's just been this last year, I had his own TV show on Amazon with Christoph Waltz called The Consultant. Fantastic. He's great in it. He's done a million.
In the West Coast, basically, or are they both in?
What?
Are they both more West Coast or East Coast? Are they?
Both. They're both. Nat, before the last thing Nat did before the strike was he did a play in New York. It was Chekhov play, and it was The Seagull. Unbelievable. He was unbelievable.
Before and all that, yeah.
He was the young guy, and they're the hardest working guys I go. I know Alex just got back from Argentina where he did a movie the SAG allowed him to go do it because it was a foreign movie, but he's been working 11 months straight. He did the prequel to A Quiet Place in London. Then he spent 5 months in Europe playing Leonard Cohen in a miniseries. And then he just did started in this other movie. So and Nat's getting ready to do a movie where he's playing Peter Yarrow from Peter, Paul and Mary. They're just super busy.
Well, that's great.
And they're both writing. Alex has got one movie that he wrote, directed, and starred in called The Cat in the Moon. It's still on Amazon. And he has a new movie that he's trying to get made. He's going to get made. He's talking with different actors. And Nat just wrote a script that he's going to get made, that he's going to direct. They're just in it, man. They're the hardest working people I know, for real, you know.
Well, to go back to the parents, let's one at a time. What has Polly been doing? Has she been?
Oh, Polly's super busy. Yeah, she was on an ABC show this last year called The Company You Keep, with this guy Milo Ventimiglia playing her son, and it was about a family of con artists. It was cool. I mean, after that writer's strike, it got canceled. Nacho got canceled. You know, the writer's strike just messed everything up. But she's doing that, and she's writing and directing a lot. She wrote a film over COVID. She was super busy. She directed a movie. She wrote a script for a big studio. She did a really great guest star recently on this really funny show on HBO called Hacks with Gene Smart. And
that was great. What did she do on Hacks? I saw.
Yeah, she played the fortune teller.
Okay, I have to go back and investigate. I saw part of the first season.
So hopefully they're going to write her in for the next season to do a little more. And she had a blast. She loves those women. It was really great. And she's doing that. And then she's getting ready to direct a thriller as soon as the SAG strike is over. A really nice script that she didn't write, but she'll direct it. So, you know, everybody's busy. I'm the weak link, as my friend Dave Schroeder, who runs the jazz program where I teach at NYU, goes, "You're the weak link, man." I go, "I know it. I dig it, man."
Well, one of the things that you did at being the weak link was in the kids' TV show, which we've watched a few episodes of with my young daughters. I've got my 16-year-old, my 9-year-old, Anya and Simona, and they love your kids. And one of the things we notice, your character in there is a funny character. I mean, to sum the show up in a way, it's kind of the idea that these young kids have a band that exceeds even the Beatles in popularity.
Oh, that's what it is. It's a mock documentary. When we did the movie, how a kid's band as popular as the Beatles. And then when kids saw the movie and Nickelodeon bought it, they took it a little more realistically. So we did a little more like what was happening, but it was always a mockumentary.
But like the idea of Cindy Blackman, taking a drum lesson from your son Alex, just
exactly. Or Cyndi Lauper, and that was in the movie. But yeah,
that kind of thing. Now your character is almost like Lucy, and I Love Lucy, that she wants Ricky to put her in the act, and you play this accordion playing, lederhosen wearing.
I know my wife wanted to humiliate me the most she could, and she did.
She managed to do that. Yeah, but you are very funny in it, and I think that's.
It's fun for me. I always wanted to do something like that. I'd studied acting. I'd done one movie, but playing a keyboard player, but called Magic Sticks. It was actually a German movie, but it was in English. And then so getting to do this, because Polly was the showrunner, creator, writer, director. Our kids were the stars, so I was really helping produce it. And I had a really great music assistant, this guy Michael Berry. He's gone on to huge fortune creating samples for composers. But yeah, so we had a studio in my apartment, and we had a same studio set up on the set, so we could write the underscore. We'd be shooting one episode, but we had 3 episodes we had to score. So I would am I scene over? Great. I'd run up. Oh, I got 2 hours. I'd go up and write music. Then I'd come back. I'd do it with my, costume on and all that. So yeah, it was the most fun. We got up every morning. I'd work out in the morning, about 6 a.m. on the elliptical and do all this stuff. And then we'd all get in the van. They Teamster would come and pick us up, our whole family, and then a couple of people that lived around here, a couple of the other actors. And we go in about 7 to the set. And we all go to makeup if we were working or whatever. And the whole day was amazing. We had music teachers because they had to learn to sync to the songs that Nat and Alex had done. They had other kids. And so it was a real factory, and it was super fun. It was super fun to get to be with your kids. And we didn't want our kids to be not like real kids. So we wanted them to go to real school. So we basically shot in the summer in Brooklyn. It would go a little late, maybe till like October or something, or end of.
They didn't just have tutors; they actually went to school.
Oh, well, they would have tutors during the shooting. Then they went to professional children's school,
right?
Which was great school. It wasn't an art school, but it was for kids that did that. So it was set up that they could leave if they go off and do a movie or something. But yeah, so they could have a regular life,
So I want to get to the, sort of the final, not the final phase, but the phase that kind of, to set it up, I would say that, you're living this really lovely, charmed life with your kids and with
right.
family. And you're like what the Brazilians would call, you're living a life with a bunda, what is it? Virado para a lua, which means your asshole is pointing toward the moon. I don't know why they use that imagery.
Okay.
The light is shining on you. You're having a wonderful life, basically.
Yeah.
And then the worst thing happens that could possibly.
Well, what happened was I just noticed I had some lymph nodes in my groin swollen up on both sides. And I wasn't feeling bad, I was feeling okay. I went to my regular doctor and he checked me out. He goes, well, you're so healthy, man. I think nothing's bad in your blood work or anything. I think you're cool, and just keep an eye on it. But it didn't go away. It got a little worse. But this guy, I don't go to that doctor anymore. So about 3 or 4 months later, I go, what are we going to do, Matt? He says, well, I'll send you to an oncologist. So I go to that oncologist. He checks me out. And he goes, I don't think it's anything, but I'm going to need you to go get a PET scan. So I come back and he goes, okay, you got lymphoma. Well, we don't know what kind of lymphoma it is. So you got to go get a biopsy. I'm going to do this. What is it? Some kind of test in your back and put a big needle and they pull out this stuff, Anyway, turned out to be diagnosed as follicular non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, stage 4. That means it's everywhere. But the cell was not considered a bad cell. So with this kind of cancer, they say, well, this isn't a curable cancer, but it is a treatable cancer. So we'll be able to treat it. We'll treat you now. It'll go away, and it might go away for 5 to 10 years. And when it comes back, we'll treat you again. Well, they had it kind of figured out. So they said, but we don't start treatment until you're sick. You're not sick now. Well, why would we treat it? Statistically, it doesn't really pay to do it. So, just live your life. And if you start feeling sick, we'll do the treatments, So
what year is this, Mike?
Oh, don't ask. I don't even know. It's about 10 years ago. I would say I should really know these years, 2013 or 14, something like that, right?
Oh, it's like somebody told me when we were young, when I was about 15, he said, he was an older guy, a bass player, Russell Stavakis. He said, you see, you're still thinking in years, day to day, month to month. At my age, he was 50 something. You think in decades.
There you go. Yeah, I was thinking in sections, A section, B section. So anyway, so I was feeling good. And for about 9 months, I really kind of put it out of my mind, to be honest. My son Alex was doing a really cool movie called Coming Through the Rye. He was a star out of it. And it's about a kid. And he was young, maybe he was 17. So he still needed to have an adult on the set with him. That was the law, the Screen Actors Guild rule. Right. And he was shooting in a tiny little town in Virginia. He was a star, and he was with Chris Cooper, played J.D. Salinger. So he plays a kid who's in school, and he wants to go do make a play of a Salinger book, Catcher in the Rye, all this stuff. Anyway, it's a great movie. So my wife and I traded off. He was out. They put him up at some farm, so they rented a car for us. It was kind of fun. But, you still have to get up at 6 a.m. and the haze and drive him there and just sit there all day on the set at the monitor or doing something else. You have to be a stage parent, which we'd always had the other stage parents when we were doing our show, but she had to be the stage parent. So we were there sometimes together, but mostly separate because we both had stuff to do in New York. And you could basically take the train there. It's south of DC.
Right.
But starting to feel kind of bad, I thought, well, maybe I'm just getting a cold or something. I started sweating at night and having fevers, and I just spaced on having this cancer, man. So I go to the local doctor, and he checks me out. He goes, I think you got, because I was having pain in my left groin. think you have diverticulitis. So he gives me all this medicine for that. And after a week, I'm getting worse and worse and worse. Mm-hmm. And finally, he sends me to the hospital and they do a scan and they go, man, oh, you have cancer, right? I go, yeah. I said, well, it's all over, So I called my wife, said, you got to come down. I got to go up to New York. But I'm getting in more and more pain. Anyway, she came, I took the train up to New York. Doctor gave me a bunch of Percocet and he decided to start treating me with chemo, and he did. And it seemed to work right away. The lymph nodes went away. I wasn't in pain anymore. So he treated me off and on for 9 months, but I was going steadily downhill, man. I could not get well, even though it looked like I was getting better. So I ended up being in bed for about 8 or 9 months. I could not get out of bed. I mean, just to go to the doctor, in the bathroom, that was awful. And I was up all night, couldn't sleep every hour, sweating every hour, taking my t-shirt off. It was lonely as fuck. And in the middle of the night, you're sweating and everybody's asleep. I don't want to wake anybody. And then the day I was just living on Percocet, man, to try to get through the day. It was a nightmare. I wouldn't wish it on Trump. That's how bad I felt.
That's how bad.
So finally she said, you got to, I was going to just a really good gynecologist, a really good oncologist. So anyway, I finally went up to Memorial Sloan Kettering. It's hard to get in there, but I got in there through a friend. And that lymphoma guy goes, wow, he was kind of looking at my chart. He goes, well, it looks like your chart. It looks like you're well. Why are you acting like this? I don't get it, All right, well, it wasn't that nice, He goes, I'm going to do another biopsy. I'm not going to just treat you. He was an old bird, so he does another biopsy. He says, all right, we'll call you when it's ready. So he calls us. We go back for the next appointment, maybe a week or two. And I'm fading, man. I'm crying. I'm so sick, And he puts us in a little room and he pushes the Kleenex towards us. He says, well, I have to tell you, you have a disease I've never seen. I think I was about 70. It's called histiocytic sarcoma. It's a rare cancer. I've never seen it. I don't know much about it. I'm going to get you to the rare cancer guy right away, because he knew how sick I was, So he gets me to the rare cancer guy. He goes, yeah. So Polly and I go home after that first thing and we look at it. She goes, well, don't look it up. Because when you look it up, it's only 300 people have had it. And it was 6 months survival rate.
Whoa.
From diagnosis. So in the meantime, I'd been in bed. I was so sick. I couldn't get out of bed. And I just tried to watch TV. I couldn't stay awake. In the meantime, Nat, during that time, started his first movie called Paper Towns. And he was traveling all over the world promoting it by this guy, John Green. And Carla Delevingne was his love interest. It was really but he was in Brazil. Anyway, so I'm there, with that cancer doctor, the specialist, right, Dr. Gounder, and I say, well, look, Polly and I've been doing a little reading, and we know I'm going to go somewhere where somebody's really dealt with this. It's such a rare disease. You got to tell me who's seen the most of these? He goes, I have. I go, well, how many cases have you had? He said, in your career? He said, 10. And I didn't ask him what happened. I'm sure they all died, but I didn't ask him. So we leave, and I said, am I going to survive? And he said, well, I'll fight with you. So we go home, and I said, that was not encouraging, man, from that guy.
Not at all.
I'll fight with you. So in the meantime, when I went there the first time, they said, we're doing a kind of a trial where we take everybody's blood and we do a genomic blood test to see what mutations they have in their blood and their DNA. Would you be willing to do it? I go, sure. And then it tests you for everything, AIDS and hepatitis and everything, So they take this blood, but in those days, it took 6 weeks. I think it's much quicker now. So I'm waiting, and the doctor, Dr. Gounder, said, whoa. We go back the next week. I said, well, we're going to wait for that test. He goes, we can't wait. I'm going to give you this, what he called kind of punchy chemo. It's stronger than anything you had. I go, okay. So I go do that. And I go home, and the next day, I think it's the next day or a day after, my wife gets me, I'm on the floor, and she thinks I've overdosed on Percocet because I'm babbling to her. So she calls, says, I'm going to call 911. And I said, don't call 911. I don't know if I said it, but I tried to say it. So I'm picked up 911 guys come, the paramedics, and they put me on this stretcher and they roll me down. We go to the elevator and we're going out. And I just look up these lights and I don't know where I am because it turns out we got new lights in our lobby, which I didn't know. And I said, well, where am I? She goes, you're in our lobby. And then the next thing I know, I went out and I woke up the next morning and I'm in the ICU and I've, got stuff and I'm hooked up everywhere. And, I look around and I see dead people in their things. I see, people got stuff all into their, it's awful, man. It's because it's a clear thing, So I'm in there and Polly, my wife, comes in and says, you're in the ICU. Okay, and they brought you in last night and they worked on you all night. And, that's it. So a doctor comes in. I guess they thought I was passed out. So they said to her, do you have a DNR? And she goes, what's that? And I go, resuscitate me. It was do not resuscitate. I go, resuscitate me. Fuck that. I'm not ready to go, man.
You popped up out of the coma. So.
Yeah. I heard it.
Mm-hmm.
So she said, well, I think Nat's gonna, Nat was in Brazil. Well, Nat's gonna fly back to see you. I was so out of it, man. I was on Dilaudid, a real stronger than morphine and all that, and morphine, whatever. And they didn't know what to do with me, man. So an infectious disease doctor comes in and he goes, your white blood cells are supposed to be what, 8,000? Yours are 40. I go, shit, what are we going to do? He said, nothing we can do. Your body just has to do it on its own. I go, okay, thanks. So that guy leaves. And my original oncologist sits down next to me and he goes, I just want to let you know that sometimes people in your condition don't make it. I hope your kids will get here fast. But, I was so out of it, man. I didn't upset me. I went, okay, whatever, man. I was out.
I've kind of been there because of I'm not quite there, but I was kind of close to that, so I can empathize with what you're saying. I want to read one little passage from your book.
Yeah, please.
Describe what it was like to live with you, during this period, which I find it very, apropos to the situation. It says, my illness took a big toll on my family. I couldn't be a good husband and father. Hell, I wasn't even a good adult. I was in so much need. I could only take. Much of the time, I was in a deep depression and otherworldly mental state and didn't register a lot of what was going on around me. How could I, when we had to use all of my concentration to remember which pills to take, to drink enough liquids, how much insulin to shoot into my stomach, and so on. On the inside, I was eternally grateful for the care and love I was receiving from everyone, but I couldn't return any of it. I wasn't ready to die, but my existence was a fucking nightmare. I was drugged, sick, lonely, and basically killing whatever time I had left on the planet. While I had never been the most easygoing guy and had often let my temper get the better of me, this was another level of awfulness, and my response to it was another level of bad behavior. It wasn't something I had any control over, and my family and friends were endlessly understanding of that, but it took a toll on all of us. So just to give an idea of, what you were going through internally at that time, I hope you don't mind me reading that passage, but
that's the truth,
I thought you put it, very well.
I had to lay it out, man,
Yeah, so now you're on, and soon there actually is a light at the end of the tunnel, and it's not a moving train.
It's not what?
And it's not a moving train.
No, I was lucky. My wife would keep. Well, first of all, I had to be in the hospital for 3 weeks. I couldn't walk. I couldn't do anything. I ended up getting a blood clot in my groin. I was really in bad shape. I wouldn't eat. And my wife, one doctor came in. He was because I had been taking so much steroids, I developed diabetes. So then I had to shoot myself with the fucking insulin before every meal, and plus adding insult to injury, and I had to figure it out.
Adding insulin to injury.
So you got to test yourself, then you figure what you're going to eat. So you just kind of guess. I didn't kill myself with it, so I'm lucky, however I did it. So anyway, I was there for 3 weeks, man, and this doctor comes in and he goes, the hematologist goes, well, what do you eat? I go, well, I've been a vegetarian for 25 years. He goes, so he looks at my chart. He goes, eat meat, eat meat. Oh, okay. So my wife's there, and I didn't want to eat anything. So she would order lamb chops and hold it over my mouth like I was a bird, and maybe I just eat a little. I mean, I would not. It was, I can barely remember it. But I started getting better. And
do you eat meat now?
Did you very. I mean, if my wife cooks some meat, I will have a bite, or maybe a small lamb chop. I'm not really a meat eater, but I'll eat it a little bit. But I don't think I need it now, like I did. But I'll have a bite. I mean, I was religiously a vegetarian. I'm not that way now, but I want my heart to be good. And my dad died of a heart attack young, so I try to be cool, But it was those 3 weeks were really rough in the hospital, and that was before they had. That was when the guy and Sloan Kettering was talking with my wife, going, "I'm stumped, as this blood test is coming in, I'm not seeing any mutation that causes cancer. I really don't know what to do." And I talked to him on the phone, the ICU. I said, "Man, don't ever give me that shit again." He goes, "Don't worry, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to give you any more chemo. Don't worry about it. Sorry, Mr. Wolff." And call me every week, and he felt bad about it, or was worried or whatever. So, but I think he knew I was on the way out. He thought I had a few months, when I saw him. Now he tells me you had 3 months. So anyway, so there was the African American orderly, and they wanted me to sit up at one point. I said, "Fuck that, I'm not sitting up." So he would come in, say, "Come on." I said, "I'm too tired." He goes, "Okay, I'll be back in an hour. You rest up." And he would make me sit up. He pulled me up. And then he said, "Okay, grab my arms. We're going to sit up." "Okay, that's really good. Now here's what we're going to do. You're going to stand up and you're going to walk to that chair." And I did it. And Polly's going, "Yay." And I just think, this is what's getting applause in my life, that I fucking walked from the bed to the chair. It was depressing, and I was really depressed. And my sister, who was a social worker from Berkeley, came to hang, and she and Polly had a chat, and they both came to me and said, "You think you need to take an antidepressant, man?" All right. Oh, I don't care. So the psychiatrist gave me like Celexa, 40 milligrams. Oh, I can't remember what it. Yeah, Celexa. It was cool, and I think it helped. It took about a month, but so it was a nightmare, man. So I did slow. There was some people there. There was a woman, like an angel, this black woman that worked at night, and she, I'd have to. Anyway, it's really awful. But she would take care of me, and she'd give me baths in the bed, and then I slowly started walking, and then I get to where I could go out of the room, and then I could walk around once, and so I got to the place where they could take me home, and yeah, I'm just telling you all the humiliating things. But they hired this. My wife hired this ambulette, which is kind of an ambulance, but was an emergency, because I didn't think I could step up into a cab. Yeah, I was so weak. And they kind of help you.
I'm still a little like that.
Huh?
Never recovered walking fully.
Yeah.
I have to walk a bit. I can make it from the house from my chair to the bathroom and around the house. I have to walk in the hall while pushing a walker, and that kind of thing. So I know kind of that feeling of helplessness.
Oh, yeah. So we have this really lovely friend named Amy Ryan, who's an actress. You'd recognize her. She's great. And she just happened to come visit me that day. She and Polly had done a play, and we become friends. And that was the day I was leaving. So she helped me pack up, and I was so embarrassed, like Amy Ryan, who I really love, and pretty actress, and
Or something.
Anyway, so we went home, and but then I'm at home and nothing's happening. And then I go one day to the doctor, and he goes, "Give me a high five, give me a high five." We go, "What?" He goes, "I think I found the mutation that gave you the cancer, and I think I found a medicine that may do it." Oh, what was it? It's well, you got a MEK mutation, MEK, and there's this little pill called Mechanist, It's used for people with metastasized melanoma. I go, okay, I'll try it. But he says it's going to be hard for you to get because of insurance and it's not for your cancer. So says usually if it's Sloan Kettering, they can usually get it, but it took about a month, man. A long time to get that medicine. In the meantime, my wife's going to like this guy who does natural stuff. So some lady's coming over 3 times a week and giving me IV of vitamin C. Taking, natural stuff didn't do anything for me, but you do what you can do. Finally, this medicine comes. The medicine comes. It's such a little pill. It looks like a sugar pill. I think there's no fucking way, after what all I've been through and all the chemo and all of this and that, this is going to have any effect on me. But I'm going to take it. What do I got to lose?
Sure.
I take it one day. I take it the second day. And all of a sudden, all of my symptoms disappear. I had a symptom where every day I'd get these rigors and shake for about 45 minutes. You can't control yourself from a high. You get a super high fever. It's super cold. And I would, sweat all night. 2 days of taking this baby 2 milligram pill and it all went away. So I tell the doctor that. He goes, oh my God, high five, we got to do it the next week. Let's do another PET scan, see where you're at. We go in, he goes, you're not going to believe this, 80% reduction of all your tumors in 1 week or 10 days.
Wow, miracle.
This is it. He says, so I said, well, what's the research on this? He goes, you're the research. There's no research.
Right, you're the research, right?
So then over the next couple of years, he's researching me, because he doesn't want me to get resistance. So we take that 2 milligram thing for a month or so. Then he goes, okay, I'm going to change this up now. I want you to double it. And I want you to double it for a week and then go back to the 2. And then, all right, after that, let's triple it. But then I would get side effects, not bad, but, rashes and, I got really sensitive to this. I got skin cancer or, stuff like that. So then he'd stop it sometimes for 3 weeks. Let's stop it. I go, really? He goes, yeah, let's take a break. He just tried all kind of shit. Finally, after 2 years, I'd had many PET scans, 1 a month. He says, I haven't seen cancer in 2 years from you or a year or whatever. I said, well, how will I know if I'm cured? He goes, it's up to you. You'd have to stop the medicine. That's the only way we could know. But it's up to you and your wife. I said, I'm not asking my wife. I'm stopping it right now.
Really?
He goes, okay, well, look, if it doesn't come back in 1 year, you're cured. I said, remission? He goes, no, you're cured. That means we found the key to the lock of this cancer. And he thought because of that mutation he had, this guy's a rare cancer guy. He's like a genius. So he says, we're going to keep doing tests, but believe me, you will know before any of our tests if it comes back. You know all your symptoms. And after a year, it didn't come back. He says, you're cured, man. I'll see you and come back in 6 months. So I come back in 6 months. I do PET CT. Perfect. See you in 6 months. And now he goes, let's do it every year. So now it's been 4 years. This last June, it was so perfect. He goes, you even want to come back?
Oh, that's wonderful, Mike.
I said, I want to come back. He says, well, come back in a year just so we, take the test and we'll talk. We can visit. So, and he did say to me, I said, well, what if it comes back? He says, well, a drug company sent you. He wrote it up in New England Journal of Medicine, my case. A drug company came in and made a drug specifically for what I have. And they realized it wasn't even a sarcoma. They realized it's actually part of leukemia, blood cancer. So he wouldn't even treat it, Now it's over with some other guys. So I asked him, last year, well, since that drug's come and everything, what percentage of people can you help that have what I had? He goes, oh, I cure 100% now.
Oh,
we just give them this medicine. Oh, isn't that amazing? Oh. So if I get my music just doing that. And I said, well, you're a genius. He goes, no, man, you did it with me. So, most patients, he said, it was jazz what we did. He said, I didn't know what I was doing. And most patients wouldn't have done what you did. I go, what do you mean? I didn't have a choice. He goes, yeah, you had a choice. You could have just not done it. I said, no way, man. So I love that guy for the rest of my life. We were all close, our family.
Yeah. And, I think that is jazz. You take a chance. The idea of taking the chance.
Oh, nothing to lose, man. I have permanent chronic side effects from the treatment. Oh, and that's a certain thing they're starting to study now with cancer patients. So many are living. There's so many treatments now that are saving people, but you get these chronic things. So, I deal with them. They don't really keep me from doing anything. I can exercise, I can play, I can travel, I can do all this stuff, but I have to deal with it. I have to take blood thinner shots twice a day in my stomach and, do all kind of shit.
But you kick the main drugs. I remember there's a part of the book where you talk about, being rather addicted to the Percocet.
Yeah, I'm off of everything. Yeah. Percocet I got off in the week. The hardest one to get off was prednisone.
I'm still on 10 milligrams a day of prednisone.
That's not bad, 10 milligrams.
Yeah,
I was on 40.
They had me up to 50, and I'm down. It took a few weeks to wean me off of it down to 10. But yeah, I mean, well, it's wonderful that you've been able to do that. And now you're touring again. You just finished some gigs with our friend Mike Clark.
Yeah, I got more stuff coming up on this month, October 27th and 28th. I'll be at Mesro with Ben Allison and great drummer Daryl Green. And then on the 14th of November, I'll be at Zinc Bar with Mike Clark and Ben Allison. So, yeah.
What's that called? The Wolff Clark Expedition? What is the name of that?
Yeah, we're just calling it Wolff and Clark. But yeah, Wolff and Clark Expedition. We did some nice touring over the summer. We played in San Francisco. There's a new jazz club called Keys Jazz Bistro, and it used to be El Matador. It was a club I used to play with Cal Jader. You probably played there. And it was on Broadway, in North Beach in San Francisco. So Mike Clark and I, right when I got sick, he and I had made our second album, and we were really getting a lot of traction for Wolff and Clark Expedition. We had SF Jazz. We had all these gigs. And I tried to make them. I just couldn't make them. I'm saying, Mike, I'm sorry, man. I can't. I couldn't get out of bed. I was so sick. So, it goes the way it goes, man.
Yeah. Well, now you're traveling and playing. And
I don't like to travel like I used to, man. Kenny Rank is a singer I used to work with. He says, hey, I play for free. I get paid to travel. So I don't like to travel that much anymore. I mean, I do. I'll do it. But, not. A friend of mine called me and says, hey, man, I could put a really good guitar player. I could put a tour together for us in the summer, and we could go around in a van for a month on the West Coast. I go, not for me, man. Thank you.
Well,
I can't do it. I can't do it.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of feel, fortunately, I did a lot of traveling. Like George Mraz said something similar to Kenny Rankin. Say, my profession is traveling. My hobby is playing the bass.
There you go.
And, I would tell people that too. I would say, listen, I've never charged to play music. The music is free. The traveling you got to pay me for, and that's kind of how that goes.
Well, you know what? I don't know about you, but at this age, and I think from all I've been through, and I still take a little Celexa, 10 milligrams. They don't want me to come off it. I take a bunch of other stuff, obviously, but
I do too.
Gabapentin, and it's for I got bad neuropathy from the chemo, the first chemo. So that means really bad tingling and pain in your hands and feet. But
gabapentin is one of the things that I take. My wife knows everything, all the names of everything.
That's a good one. It's a good one.
Yeah.
So it solved that. But God, I kind of lost my train of thought. But anyway, the point.
Traveling.
The
traveling and medicines and that.
Yeah, traveling is, it's cool, but I just like to play music, and I like the last week, you won't believe it, I discovered 3 chords. I don't know how it happened. One by accident, and 2 by accident. I was just messing around with them, and I just, what is that chord? I didn't even know what it was. I just knew it sounded great, and one dominant chord with a major 7th on top, and it sounds great. So I don't know, I'm kind of figuring out now how they work, but to me, that's what thrills me. Music thrills me.
Yeah, I do. And I love traveling. As a matter of fact, I made a lot of friends, as we talked about last time, the thing Mike Gresham told me, how I would meet people and learn languages. And all of that was such a wonderful thing, and a wonderful thing to experience. But I've done just enough of all of that. I miss the fact that I can't travel because of because of my breathing, be in an airplane, and risk that, So I live with that, and that's okay.
Well, I was going to say, this is what I was going to say. I feel differently than I do about music now than I did. I mean, I realized my kids and my wife and my people that I love, my friends, even you, Bob Mover, the people that matter to me, even you, Jesse, people that matter to me are what counts. And the music is awesome. But I really feel that changed. And I feel all the dead people in my life, my parents or Cannonball or whoever, they're there with me. You know, I feel that. And when I go to play music, I used to be so excited to play. And now I feel it differently. I feel it's like on another level. It doesn't feel the same way. Not that I don't enjoy it, but it feels more like, I just have to say what I have to say on the music rather than being excited about it. You know, it's just a different feeling. Maybe it's age, you know?
Yeah, I think it becomes a part of you, and you're just kind of, just like you talk to somebody, or just like you.
Oh, yeah.
It's your feelings, and that's what it is. You know, it's just how you feel about everything.
Yeah.
That you can't express in words. That's why we play music, to express these non-expressible, non-verbal feelings that we have that go deeper than words, I think, you know, in its way.
You're right.
But on that note, I think we've said a lot of words today. And, you know.
How long did we go this time, Jesse? 2 hours? Almost.
Let me see.
Yeah, we started about 4:20.
Yeah, it's almost 2 hours ago.
Started at 4:36, actually. That's now 6:20.
All right.
So we've done that, and I think we've covered a lot about your life. And oh, by the way, I'm just curious, what happened to the Salinger movie?
Oh, well, it's great. It's online somewhere. Yeah, Coming Through the Rye. It's a really good movie.
All right, I'm going to check it out.
I don't know where it is. You know, I can just tell you. I mean, I always just say, where is it? But Coming Through the Rye. It's on one of the. You know, if you go to
Prime or Netflix or one of those.
Yeah, I think so. Let's see. It's a really good movie. The Rye. God damn it! My fucking typing on this thing sucked with the thumbs. I'll tell you that. Okay, Rye film.
Relate. We can relate. I learned typing on a typewriter, so I can relate.
Well, okay, let's see what it says. It's on Prime Video, baby.
Oh, good. Okay.
Coming Through the Rye. Now, Alex's movie, The Cat and the Moon, that he wrote, directed, and starred in. My son, that's on Amazon too, I think. The Cat and the Moon. It is a really good movie. It's about private high school students in New York City, which is something he knew about. It's wild. It's a really good movie. He wrote it, directed, and starred in it.
And
you two should really consider doing a podcast together. I think that would be great.
Yeah,
well, we'll talk about that. We're going to get together pretty soon.
All right, The Cat and the Moon seems to be on Hulu. Yeah. Or Apple TV, Peacock. Yeah. Oh, well, we should do a podcast. That would be fun. Interview some other people. Let's interview some other sick people.
Yes, I think we should. Hey, Fred Hirsch. We didn't know Fred's story.
One of my close friends, Fred.
Yeah, Fred was in one of my early bands too. Actually, when he was first in New York, I had a beautiful day with him. He used to have those two Steinways at his apartment. He had those two Steinways.
Oh yeah.
And we used to use his apartment to rehearse my groups in. And one day Albert Daly stayed over later, and I played a beautiful, one of my favorite days of music was playing with the two pianists, with Fred and Albert Daly and me.
Wow, that must have been awesome.
And it was so much fun, man. You know, like two genius piano players just kicking me to, you know, to places I'd never been before.
That sounds great.
Yeah, it was fun. Anyway, let's talk about that. We'll talk about that. We may be having the germ of a new.
You know, there's a song that I wrote called "Tough Ashkenazi," because when I first came back from being really sick, I played at Mesro with Ben Allison, and I was really weak, you know, but I was strong in the first set. And Fred came to support me, and I said, "How was it, Fred?" He goes, "You were really strong, man." I go, and I know everything he's been through. I go, how do we do it, Fred? How do we do it? He goes, "We're some tough Ashkenazis." So I said, "Yeah, we're some tough Ashkenazi motherfuckers, is what we are." So TAM is what we always call each other. Hey Tam, you know.
Hey Tam. Well, I'm almost in that league.
Yeah.
And, we have to say, if you don't know what happened to Fred, Fred was in a coma and composed music, actually, when he came out.
My Coma Dreams, yeah.
My Coma Dreams, and that became a book. And also,
he wrote a great memoir too, by the way.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, he wrote a really nice memoir. Yeah, Fred is a great artist. I just took my son Nat. We went to hear him in the Vanguard a month or so ago. It was inspiring.
Yeah, I remember when he got to town from Cincinnati.
Yeah.
Well, that was where he was from.
Well, when he heard me first, he said he was I was at Paul's Mall with Sonny Rollins, and he was studying at New England Conservatory. And he said, I'd see you there, then I'd see you with Cannonball. And I thought, how does that guy keep getting those gigs, I don't really know how I did. Well, different days,
You're a very gifted guy, and you were in the right place at the right times, too,
The right group of people, yeah.
That's, I think, what happens with how it happens, how you happen to, so-and-so that knows so-and-so.
Oh, it was always that, man.
Yeah, So, anyway, on that note,
let's call it, man. Bob's, what a pleasure. Jesse, thanks for everything.
Once again,
absolutely.
All on that note.
Yeah, it's on Amazon. On that note,
on Amazon.
Memoir of Jazz, Tics, and Survival. Michael Wolff, Wolff.
That's right. And I want to thank you, Mike. And I want to thank everybody that tuned into this. And you can comment on it. Send us, if you appreciated it, send us that. Or in the social media sense, give us a like. I guess that's what you do in this context. I want to thank Jesse Kaiser, without whose knowledge and work and putting everything together for us, this couldn't even be an idea.
I love doing this. It gives me stability and balance and pleasure in life. Because
I'm glad, because
the world's a bit wacky out there, let me tell you.
Oh yeah, and let's say a prayer for everyone that's being affected by this terrible Middle East situation.
We didn't even go into that. Yeah.
Well, we won't go into that, but we were sorry for all the suffering in the world, and if everybody listened to jazz, we might have less of that.
Right.
Anyway.
We suffer less. Yeah.
Yeah, I might be less suffering, But anyway, this is how it is.
Well, thanks for having me, and I'm glad we got to do these 2 sessions. It's fun to talk to you.
Fun to talk to you, Mike, too. And we'll get together anyway, like this week or next, just to hang out and do some music.
Definitely, I'm around.
So that'll be fun. Thank you again. Thanks, Jesse. Thanks, everybody. And on the real side, this is Bob Mover